Welcome to the Worth Listening podcast, where we focus on having positive and productive conversations around money. I'm your host, Lauren, a 4-time Olympian and certified financial planner. On this show, my guests share their money stories. Everyone has a unique story and experiences both wins and losses when it comes to money. My intent is to give listeners something they can relate to, something that builds their courage to be open and take control of their own money story. When I'm not creating a great show for my listeners, I'm running my company, Worth Winning, where I help individuals and families organize their finances. Check us out at worth-winning.com. All right, now on with the show. We are just about at the end of 2018. If you thought this year was the year you were going to get it all figured out financially, and you didn't, it's okay. A new year is ahead, and maybe all you need is a little bit of accountability. I like to say finances are a game of chess, not checkers. It's all about the strategy. If you've been struggling to win at your finances, Worth Winning's ultimate game plan might be just what you need. I can help you create a personalized plan to reach your financial goals. You can learn more at worth-winning.com. Today, I'm excited to have Tela Holcomb here to share her money memoir with us. Tela started learning how to trade the stock market in 2009 while she was a single parent. After being fired from her job in 2012, she used the stock market to become debt-free, retire from her 9-to-5 before turning 30, and pay off her mom's house in addition to her own. Tela is a stock market expert and the creator of Trade Your 9-to-5 and has helped thousands of people understand the stock market. I could tell you so much more about this episode, but why don't we let Tela tell her story herself? You're not going to want to miss this. Tela, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to sit down and talk to you today.
You have a super interesting story, so I can't wait for our listeners to hear it. And let's just start at the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about where you're from, how you grew up, and what do you remember as your first memory of money?
So I am originally from Alabama. I grew up in a single parent household. It was just my mom, me, and my brother. My mom didn't make a lot, and she did work like 2 jobs, but I never felt like we were without anything. So she obviously did the best that she could and made it all work. But now looking back, I can see where she did kind of struggle and couldn't be there for us all the time because she was working the 2 jobs. But one of my earliest memories of money was because of my mom. I remember being like 14, 15, and she made me sit down and learn about the bills and the checkbook, how to write the checks for the bills, how to balance the checkbook. And I was so upset. I'm like, Mom, I don't want to sit here and do this. But she made me learn how to do it. And she was like, sign my name and all this stuff, like take care of all of it. And then what do we have left? How much do we have to buy groceries with? Like all of that. And I didn't want to do that at 14, 15. But it truly paid off. Looking back at it now, it really helped me financially, or, me being good with money. I feel like it stemmed from learning how to do all that from an early age. And whereas my brother, she didn't have him doing any of that. And so he's not that good with money. My mom was in the mindset that there are certain things, I don't want to say like certain things that girls do and certain things that boys do, but that's generally how it fell. It's like, okay, the girls are doing this and taking care of the house and the bills and stuff, like paying it. And the men, like, they go out and make the money, even though she was a single mom, but that's just how she raised us. And so I ended up being good with money and he didn't.
That's interesting too, that there was kind of like a subconscious sort of gender role there, because like you said, the man goes out and makes the money. I think frequently, sometimes people in the household, they think that the man usually managed the finances of the household, but you were raised differently than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about, was there like an allowance, a piggy bank, any conversations being had outside of here's how you balance this checkbook?
No, so we didn't get an allowance, but I do remember having a job sooner than any of my friends and stuff. And I was lucky because my mom worked at this hotel and she got my brother a job with her because he's older than me. She got him a job with her, and I started working at the hotel next door to them, right? They were owned by the same company. And I started at actually 14, 15, around that time, like right after she was talking about the checkbook and the balancing. And to me, that clued in, like, let me figure out how to make this money, or how to get my own money. Because then my mom not having a lot of money, it was always like what we needed first, what she thought we needed to have. As kids, we wanted stuff and we couldn't afford it. And so I learned early on that if there were certain things that I wanted, I was going to have to figure out how to make some money and do that. So from there, I learned how to move up in the corporate ladder and start learning different skills outside of what my job was teaching me. So my first job at that hotel was the breakfast bar, right? So putting the muffins and all that out, right?
Ah.
I would do that on the weekends at 14, just so I could have my own money. And I would always go and buy these Reebok Classics. That's what I wanted my money for, because I wanted shoes and I didn't want it to be the ones my mom had to buy me.
You didn't want to pay less shoes?
No, I did not want those anymore. So I was like, I'm going to get my own money and then I'll be able to budget and do that. And I remember having this piece of paper. I would take notebook paper and I'd write down how many quarters did I have and how many nickels did I have and that number, and then total it up. I don't know. She created a monster when it came to all that. But I just learned then I wanted to keep advancing as far as my finances go.
That's pretty cool. And so when you got to high school age, were there conversations about college? Were you thinking about that? Or what did you think were kind of going to be the next steps? We turned 18 and we all say we're grown up, but you get older and you realize like you're nowhere near grown up at 18. So what were you thinking was going to happen after high school?
From like 9th, 10th grade, about 10th grade, I knew I was going to college. I knew I wanted to go to Florida State University. And every year I would download their application. I would fill it out. Obviously I wouldn't turn it in, but every year I was like, that's where I'm going. So I would get the application, fill it out. The next year, get the application, fill it out. Senior year, about halfway through senior year, I threw my mom for a loop. I wanted to go to law school, all of that. Florida State University, law school, everything. Just had my plan. And then middle of senior year, I was like, Mom, I'm not going to college. I'm going in the military. She was like, hold up, what? Because it was completely out of everything that I was already doing. And she just didn't understand why I didn't want to go to college, why I opted for the military.
So what is the why? How did that change magically?
Okay, my brother was 2 years older than me, 1 grade, 2 grades ahead of me. And I was seeing everyone ahead of me graduate from high school and either not go to college, or they would go to college for a year and then they were right back in our small town in Alabama doing nothing and in trouble and just not going anywhere. And I was looking around like, there's got to be more to all of this. I don't want to be stuck here forever. And so I felt like going to college was too easy for me to quit. I needed something that I couldn't just wake up and say, I don't want to do this anymore and leave it, right? And military is that thing. Like I had to commit at least 4 years before I could quit on it. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in the military. At least then it will take me away from here for enough time for me to do something better than going back to that town. So,
all right. So tell us what happened then. What branch of the military and how did it all play out there?
I was in the Air Force. I did the Air Force for about 3.5 years. And got out for medical because I have like a bum hip, right? Found out I had a bum hip. And so after being in the military for 3.5 years, got medical discharged. And I worked as a contractor with the military still. So it was just still doing the same job, just in civilian clothes.
And what was your job in the military?
My job in the military was aircraft avionics. So I fixed all the electronic systems on airplanes. And when I got out, I did that for a little while. I stuck around the aircraft space, but I transitioned into actually scheduling the airplanes. So airplanes have maintenance that they need. So I scheduled all of that. And then I moved to scheduling pilots who were learning how to fly those same airplanes through their whole syllabus requirements. So they have certain school requirements that they have to meet. And I ended up scheduling them for all of those requirements.
Okay, so let's pause for a second. So 3.5 years in the Air Force, that's kind of the 18 to 21 range, just, regular college age. What were you thinking about money at that time period? So you're kind of a grown up, you're off on your own, but you have this structure, but you're getting paid to do this job. How are you organizing your finances? What kind of things are you thinking about money in this time period?
during that time, it was just what my mom taught me: budget, balance your checkbook, make sure everything's paid, make sure you have some left over. And so that was all I was doing at that time, was just making sure I didn't spend to the max of what I had. Once I got out of the military, though, the contractor job, I was getting paid a lot more than what I was in the military. So then it was a lot more money to manage or deal with. But what my mom always taught me is just because you make more money doesn't mean you have to increase your expenses to that new level. And so I started making more money, and I didn't increase my spending to that. So then I was like young and still had like a ton of money to just budget, save. Like then it was a matter of like, what do I do with this at this age to make sure I'm still responsible with it?
What about your peers at that time? The people around you, did you feel like they were being as responsible? Were you the baller friend or?
I wasn't really the baller friend because visually I wasn't balling because I wasn't out just buying all these things. But the people around me were not good with money, and they were terrible with money. A lot of the guys I worked with were retirees, also working a contractor job. So they were getting two paychecks essentially. They were getting their retirement paycheck, and they're also getting their contractor paycheck for the deployments and stuff that we were doing. But they were still living paycheck to paycheck. And I could not understand that. I was like, how do you not have any money left every month? They're looking at me like, what are you doing differently? I'm like, not spending it all.
Right. Were there ever any discussions around it, or they could just kind of tell like they had stress and you didn't?
They could tell. They always needed the next deployment, that next paycheck, and I necessarily didn't. So that's when they were asking questions about like, what are you doing differently? And I remember one time just before one of my deployments, I was talking to a guy that was in the military. Again, like we worked side by side in the military. And I was telling him, I think they were getting a bump in their pay. And I told him, I said, hey, you're not used to getting that extra money. Take that extra money and start putting it towards, I think he had like a credit card or whatever. And I was like, and pay that down and it's not going to feel like you're broke. Get that paid for and that frees up money. But he didn't understand that. He couldn't fathom like, what? Not spend it? Like, why would I do that?
I think a lot of people bump into that too, is more money. So now I can spend more, and you want to treat yourself and you want to increase your quality of life. But in general, sometimes we're not saving enough as it is. So that's the first opportunity for us to be able to increase our savings, to be able to catch up with how we want to live our lifestyle when we can't work anymore, but we somehow just can't connect those dots.
Yeah.
And thinking about like what happened next, you're out of the military, you're doing this consulting.
I didn't want to do it anymore. It was a deployment position. So I had to go to Iraq, Afghanistan a few times a year. I mean, by that time I had a kid and she started getting school age. And I knew I didn't want to keep leaving her twice a year. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, I need to do something differently. I started looking for another job that didn't necessarily have me deploy. And that's when I transitioned into the one job where I scheduled the pilots. That one allowed me to stay home, but I was kind of on call because they flew day and night. And so if one student didn't get their flight, they would call me, being the scheduler, like, hey, this guy didn't get his flight today, so he can't do the one that's scheduled for tomorrow. We need you to kind of fix it. And so I just kind of traded one problem for the other. I didn't have to leave the country, but I was still pulling time away from my kid by having to be on call and step away during family time and stuff like that. So from there, it was like, okay, maybe I'll start a business because, of course, businesses let you have control over your time and money. I can work whenever I want to, and I can just work from home. So I started trying to build this business, and my employer found out, and they considered a conflict of interest because of how much I knew about the contracting space and what we did. They were like, you could easily come after contracts that we have. So they were like, you can either quit or we have to fire you. Take your pick.
Oh,
yeah.
Yikes.
Before that happened, though, I was talking to one of my coworkers and he was talking about the stock market and getting started with investing and like how he had this plan to retire early and RV the country and all that stuff. Well, he had me on the stock market and making money through it. I was like, well, tell me more about that. Because I didn't grow up hearing anything about investing, retirement accounts, or financial advisors. So I just really started pestering him with questions like, what books should I read and what classes should I take and all of this. And once I saw that you can make this money in your sleep, I was hooked.
Literally in your sleep.
Yes, literally. I was hooked. But my focus was still on that business. I wasn't thinking it could replace my pay. I just figured, okay, that's another way to make some money and I'm going to have to retire someday. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to focus on this business, getting this business off the ground. But once they gave me that ultimatum to either quit or be fired, I was like, well, now what do I do? Well, still focusing on the business, I figured that now I have all day to concentrate on this business since I don't have a job anymore. So I came home, working on the business. Nothing would click, like nothing picked up. I'd write proposal after proposal and nothing was really getting any traction with it. So during my downtime, I was investing in the stock market and doing trading and stuff and making money there. But it didn't dawn on me like maybe I should focus on doing that until me and my husband sat down and were like, let's look at our finances. Again, that whole thing my mom taught me, look at where money's coming in, where money's going out, how much do we have left, what debt do we have? And that's when we saw like, wait, I'm actually making some good money with the trading. Like, and he was like, maybe you should focus on that. Just do that full time. Forget the business. And I didn't want to listen because I'm like, no, I didn't want to be a quitter, I guess. Especially since I got fired because of it. I don't know. It's because I got fired for it. I thought it was something I had to follow through with. Like, I can't give up on this.
I think you bring up a really good point. It's like that feeling that you're stuck with this thing because you don't want to give up and how detrimental that can be to some people where you find something and you're like, I got to stick with it. Like you said, I can't be a quitter, but it's like when to know when to give up and when to move on because there's another blessing out there for you, another thing that's going to create some sort of abundance. And so what was like kind of the deciding thing that made you like, that idea sounds crazy, but finally decided like, okay, I'm gonna do this instead?
So the next quarter, here we were again, sitting down, looking at our finances. And I took the 401k for my job and I started trading it myself. I cashed it out. Don't recommend that because there are crazy fees to be paid if you do. But I transferred it to a Roth IRA and I had been trading it. And to see that I almost tripled it in 8 months after having had it with my employer for about 4 years, I was like, oh my God, okay, maybe I will put more thought into doing this trading and investing full time versus this business, because this is obviously where it's at.
Okay, so let's pause for a second. So when you're in the military, there was a retirement account available to you. Then you started consulting, or was it a W-2 job after the military?
Yeah.
Okay. So they had a 401k. So that's where the 4.5 years kind of a buildup came.
Yes.
What did you know about retirement accounts up to that point, I guess, before you started trading on your own? And like, how did you think it all worked?
I didn't. I remember starting at that job as a contractor, and this older lady I worked with, she's like, are you contributing to your 401k? I'm like, no, I don't even know what that is. She's like, they match. So she was like, you have to put at least, I think it was 3% because they match up to 3%. She's like, just at least put that in there. I was like, okay. So I just said it, forget it, and was like, I don't know, there's money going in there. I'm not even really sure what it's supposed to be doing, or how to look at it, anything. So I did what most people do, and I just let the money go in there and just forgot about it. So up to that, I didn't know anything. But when I started concentrating on the trading, I was like, oh, well, I'm limited in my 401k. Let me move this and try to manage it myself. And that's when I started really learning the power of investments and retirement accounts and all that.
How much time were you investing into learning about what to do, how to do it?
A couple hours a week. I was actually treating it like I was going to college. This is a whole new realm that I was learning. And so I treated it just like college. And I was learning about stock charts. And so anytime I had some downtime, I would pull out a stock chart out of my purse or the book or whatever. Like if I was sitting outside watching my daughter play, I had a book or some stock charts, watching her play while I'm reading. When she had extracurricular activities, I would sit there at her practices and I was either reading or looking at stock charts while I waited for her. Same thing for doctor's appointments. I'd pull out a book anytime I had idle time because it was so intriguing. And I was like, I want to figure out how to make this money in my own time and to change the possibility of retirement, because my mom was still working and I know she didn't know anything about retirement accounts. So I'm like, is she even going to be able to retire one day? I don't want to be in that position to know that I probably can't even retire. She always told me to just do better than what she did. Like, this is where I could take you to knowledge wise. Now you've got to take it further. Do better than that for me.
All right. So you have got fired / quit You are out here in these streets having to figure out your own thing, working on your business idea, I'll call it, the consulting.
Yeah.
At what point did you decide, okay, I'm on to something? Like you said, I've tripled my retirement income in 8 months. When did this become, this is what I'm going to do? And how long did it take to turn into something else? Because I know you say you retired at 29. And so how old are you at the point that you tripled your retirement account in 8 months?
That was in 2012. So 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how old is that.
Right. It was a while ago.
It was a while ago.
So 8 months goes by, you've tripled this account. And are you retired at this point? Because I know you retired pretty early on in life. Is that when you said like, okay, I've retired? Or at what point do you start referring to yourself as like, I retired from this and now I do this?
I would say 2014 is when I said, okay, I'm retired. And when I say retired, because everybody has their definition of retired.
Yes, I was going to say, break that down for us.
For me, retired meaning I don't have to rely on a 9 to 5. At that point, when I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and I no longer have to go back to a job, is because we had all of our debt paid off, and I was able to create income from another source that didn't require 9 to 5 hours. It didn't require me to clock into someone else's thing and get a W-2 or any of that. That to me is retired. Now I can do whatever I want because I can essentially make money from wherever. I've since started teaching it, but for me, retired is like, I don't even have to teach anybody how to do this if I don't want to. And I would still be okay money-wise with my trading. So to me, that is retired.
Got it. So you do still need to trade on a regular basis for yourself in order to grow your money, to keep a roof over your head, feed your family, etc. But you're confident that you'll never have to go back to another place to ask them to pay you to do something.
Yeah.
And then you do other things above and beyond that because you want to.
Yeah, exactly. We're at the point where I just need to make enough to pay utilities. That's it.
There it is. Just need to make enough to pay utilities. Did you guys hear that?
Lights, water, gas. That's it.
That's amazing. So then with debt free, then is that like no home payment either then?
No, mortgage paid for. House is ours.
House is yours. Are you guys listening to this? This is awesome.
And this year for Mother's Day, paid off my mom's house with the money from the stock market. So now she doesn't have to worry about it either.
Amen to all of that. And so now you teach people actually how to do the same thing that you're doing.
Yes.
Are you like a subscriber to what they call the FIRE movement then? Because like you said, you only have like these basic expenses, or would you describe what you do as something different?
I love the FIRE movement. I do. But I know that's not everybody's jam. Everybody's thing is different. And that's kind of what my program is structured for, is like, if you want to do what I do, you want it to be like your full-time gig and you kick your 9 to 5 to the curb, you can. Or maybe you just want another stream of income. Like, you could do that too. It's so flexible to what you want your lifestyle to look like. So I'm for whatever works for you and your lifestyle. For me, I don't want a 9 to 5. I just don't.
Right. And so then thinking about the way that you're organizing your finances now, are there other members of your financial entourage, or was there someone's help you enlisted along the way to become debt free and decide what your financial plan was and how to get to where you are today?
No, like I didn't end up working with a financial advisor or someone to like structure my debt payoff plan. Because I always lived so well under my means, it was like, let me just pay my car off. Like, why wouldn't I? I never wanted to owe anybody, right? And so every time we ever had a bill, credit card, any of that, it was like, nope, pay it off. Because I just never wanted to deal with it. And I don't know, I didn't need anybody to tell me that was the plan to get it all paid off. I just knew the less I owed out, the less that was going out of my house, the more I had to spend on stuff.
Right. I love it. So what would you say to someone that is in debt and trying to figure out how to get their financial footing? Like, what's step number one to getting yourself organized financially?
Step number one is definitely making out a budget and seeing where you could cut back. Like, honestly, like there's a lot of stuff that we spend money on that we don't need to, that we could seriously do without. I look back at the lifestyle that my mom was able to give us growing up, and it's like, We didn't have name brand shoes all the time. We didn't go out to eat all the time, but was I cold? Was I hungry? No. So it's like, if I really had to go back and live it that way, I could. Break it down and be seriously, brutally honest with yourself. Am I really eating out too much? Do I really need this next whatever? I'm not going to say giving up your daily coffee is really going to get you to millionaire status, but really stop and consider, is that a sacrifice that you could make for the next few months to get a credit card paid off, or to put an extra amount to a credit card or a bill or something like that?
Yeah, for sure. So what are you teaching your daughter about money that maybe you didn't learn, or are you telling her something different than your mom told you? What are those conversations you're having about finances?
I am definitely teaching her the things my mom taught me. So the knowing how much money you have, the budget.
Not the checkbook though, right?
No, not the checkbook. But you know what? I tried to make her have a checkbook. Like, I just got the little register out of the checkbook, and I was like, you got to write down how much you have in your wallet and then subtract. And it's kind of hard now to teach them about money now that we don't have a checkbook, because I feel like she, in the beginning, didn't really grasp the concept that there's some money being exchanged there, because she doesn't see anything. There's nothing for her to touch and subtract from. I remember going through a drive-through one day, and I gave the person $20 and they gave me my change back. She thought they were giving me money. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Okay, this is where the money lessons start. This is not what's going on. And so I'm teaching her that, to budget, to save. I'm teaching her about interest. So when she leaves her money at home and she has to borrow money from me, it costs her an extra couple of dollars because of interest.
Right. Yes.
And I'm also teaching her about investing. So she's starting to understand stock charts, teaching her about that, and then buying stocks and investing in the companies that she wants to spend all her money on.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom got me to the level of, okay, this is how you budget and save. And so now my mind was open to another level past investing. So this is how I budget and save. What's next? And so I feel like teaching my daughter saving and budgeting and now investing, for her, it's going to be like, okay, what's next? I feel like it opens the next generation to the next level if you're teaching them that stuff.
I love it. I love it. And so you have something called Trade Your 9 to 5, and it's trademarked. So tell us what Trade Your 9 to 5 is, and then talk a little bit about the trademarking process. Like, what does that even mean? Why does someone trademark something?
Yeah, that was a big move. Again, not something I learned about growing up or heard about, but I've just seen a lot of companies and people starting ideas that are worth winning, and they're not protecting them, or they find someone stole their idea because they didn't trademark it or they didn't know how to protect it. And I just knew that Trade Your 9 to 5 is a movement that a lot of people aren't talking about. So it's going to get a lot of traction, a lot of eyeballs, because people are like, what? Not working 9 to 5? That's what we've for ages have been taught and told to do. Or even just in the African American community, investing is something like, you don't see a lot of people talking about the stock market that is Black or a woman very often. And so I knew this was something worth winning with, and I wanted to protect it. So I immediately got myself a trademark attorney. She helps people protect their smarts. And it's so very necessary, because we have these ideas that are amazing and that are going to help our families build legacies for generations, but only if we protect them.
Yes. So what is a way that someone could come up against your trademark, and what protection is it offering them? Like, could you give an example of what could happen and how you're protected now that you have the trademark?
So now that I have it, I'm able to, I had someone take one of my videos and repost it as theirs. She screen recorded on her iPhone my video and then reposted it as theirs. And I was like, okay, no. That right there, because I created that video in the line of my Trade Your 9 to 5 business, that is now my intellectual property, and no one else can use it or share it and call it their own without my permission. And if they make money from it, I can take them to court and say, hey, no, that is my money. You made that off of my hard work that I created. And so I'm able to have my attorney take them to court and recoup my money. I even had someone put up a Facebook ad with my face because of the whole retire before 30. It was a picture of me, and they said, you can be like Tela, come to this free thing. And it was in Virginia. And I was like, people were signing up for this because they thought I was going to be there, because they used my face.
Oh my.
Yeah. And so I was able to get my attorney to send a cease and desist and get it stopped. So with the social media and the internet as it is, and it's so quick to like screen share or copy stuff, that you have to trademark your stuff. If you think it's going to be worth something, even if you don't think it's going to be worth something, it's still a good idea to trademark it just in case, because you just never know.
Yes. The cliche I've been running into the ground lately is it's chess, not checkers. And I think that's what you just described here.
Yeah.
Being able to take things to the next level. One, having a really awesome idea. So good so that people want to steal it.
Yeah.
But having yourself protected against it being stolen, because frequently in communities of color, like you said, you do a lot to be the first in your generation to kind of change the game, and the rug is pulled right from underneath you, and there's no recourse for that, or there's no kind of backup plan. It's like you've worked so hard and now you feel beat up and taken advantage of because you didn't know all the rules. It's like you did all this hard work to get to the next level, but the few things you didn't know demoted you once again. So
Yeah.
to be able to know these small things and, like you said, be able to protect yourself so that you can continue to excel, I think is game changing.
Yeah. I feel like it increases the value of your brand or product as well, because especially if you're in the mindset of one day wanting to sell it, it being trademarked is another plus in the win column for you when you go to express the value of the brand that you built.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. That is a big nugget of knowledge that I think many can benefit from. Somebody on the other end of this podcast, myself. That's been on my to-do list for a while, but it's not on my to-done list.
Get it on the to-done list, girl.
Get it on the to-done list. I want to go back, though, to talking a little bit about family. I mean, we talked about like how you're talking to your daughter, but you're also married. Can you talk a little bit about how you discuss finances with your spouse? Because I know that's something that people come up with quite a bit that ends up being a point of contention, and sometimes it ruins relationships. I think it helps when you have a good and organized finances, but I'm sure there's some discussions and two different points of view. So how do you discuss finances with your spouse?
We talk about every penny spent. We just do. And it's interesting because we don't even have shared accounts, but yet we know where every dollar is going. If he's spending on anything, he's going to talk to me about it. And if I'm going to spend on something, I'm talking to him about it. Like, we've always been very open from the beginning about our finances and what our financial goals were. It hasn't been an issue for us. We were both in the mindset of we wanted to be debt free. So when it was like, hey, let's pay the house off. Okay, yeah. What's the pros, the cons? It's smarter if we just pay it off. Especially looking at nobody our age has a paid off house. Like, let's just do it, when we did pay it off back in 2011. And so it was a matter of always being open and honest about our finances and where we were going with them, and what is your idea or what is your goal and what do you think we should do? And me sharing the same so that we're on the same page and working in the same direction. I think it's so important to do that. And I know sometimes couples aren't on the same page. One's a spender and one's really trying to elevate the relationship and build for retirement and eliminate debt. So you got to just definitely sit down with each other and have those conversations. Just say what you're wanting for your family, what you foresee financially, and hopefully they can get on board.
Yeah, I think it's really important. The discussions, as everyone knows, that's what this podcast is all about, is creating that space for people to feel confident about having discussions, and simply starting that conversation can be a game changer in people's financial life.
Yeah. I don't know if we talk about money. Well, we do talk about money every day because I'm like, oh, we did this trade or this trade, but we kind of have like a quarterly money meeting, right? And we talk about like, what was our goal? Are we there? What's next? And especially where we are now, we're having to have the conversations of estate planning and how do we protect the money and trusts and areas that we haven't had to do before and no one in our family has. And so we have to sit down at least every quarter and talk about what do we need to work on? How are we protecting ourselves? And how are we setting up everything for our daughter when she's old enough to take control of everything?
I love that you guys are having those discussions. And I love the idea of that quarterly meeting too. You've got to be intentional about setting time aside to have those discussions, because you can always say, oh, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Oh, we kind of talked about it. But to sit down intentionally and say, okay, let's work through this A to Z and make sure that we're still on track is that thing that holds you accountable and has you celebrating at the end of the year versus going, oh man, I didn't reach my goals.
Yeah.
We all set things at the beginning of 2018, whether you want to call them resolutions, goals, whatever it is that you wanted to call them. And now the year's winding up, and sometimes you do get all those things done and sometimes you don't. But when you don't, it's looking at why didn't I and how can I change what I didn't do this year into action items for the next year so that you get a different outcome.
Yeah.
So keeping with this theme of discussion, what about discussions with your friends? Those people that are around you right now, you're having good discussions in your household. Are you also having good discussions with your friends? If not, then what is the thing that's kind of holding people back from having these money discussions, do you think?
Yeah, actually, I am having those same discussions with friends and where they're going money wise and how they're elevating. But I did notice some friends were open to those conversations and others weren't. A lot of us have been taught not to talk about our money or talk about what's going on in your house and stuff like that. But the more we openly talk about it, the more progress we can make. The more people will see that, oh, okay, maybe I am struggling. Maybe I do need some support in getting better with my finances and things like that and not feel ashamed about it. So I'm very lucky to have friends that are open to talking about it as well. Some of the ones that don't want to talk about it, I still try to like drop some little nuggets. I feel like it's repetition. So eventually something will sink in and then maybe it doesn't even have to be heard from me, but maybe I did that groundwork to allow that nugget to sink in when it does. So I feel like if you do have those friends, have those conversations. Maybe it's a friend to help each other stay on budget, but we got to have those conversations because you're the sum of the people you hang out with. And so I'm always trying to help my friends elevate as well, especially the investing. They're like, okay, tell me about this. How do I do this too? And by sharing what I'm doing and learning, it helps them elevate as well.
Amen, amen, amen to all of that. All right. Now we've got lots of nuggets that have been dropped, and I'm ready to head into what I like to call the final sprint. So these are going to be kind of like rapid fire questions-ish. I say ish because it's not like one word answers, but first thing comes to mind.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Got $20 in your pocket right now. What do you spend it on?
Right now?
Mm-hmm.
Probably some lunch because I'm hungry.
Yes.
And I didn't cook, so that's bad.
It is lunchtime, so I'm feeling you on that. All right. Finish this sentence. That awkward financial moment when?
Probably when I don't have money to tip somebody because I never carry cash.
Ooh, that is a good one. And that is always awkward.
So awkward. Like, oh, I don't have anything for
They
you.
just hand you your bag and you're like, thank you. Yes.
I feel so ashamed.
Nailed it. No one carries cash anymore, though. I feel like I should be able to like Cash App you a tip or something. Like,
yeah. Here, Apple Pay.
Yes, that is an awkward one. All right. Most meaningful gift you've ever received. Who was it from and why was it meaningful?
Oh, this is going to sound weird. Okay, so most meaningful gift, I will say, came from my husband. And it was a microphone, okay? Because I said I wanted to teach how to do this. And so he bought me a microphone.
Oh, that is nice.
I say it's meaningful because it's helping me spread the message. And because of that microphone, because of the course I was able to create with that microphone, I've helped thousands of people start to learn the stock market. And so for me, it was meaningful, not just for myself, but for all those people that I've been able to help.
Amen to that. I love it. All right. What's your worst money habit?
Eating out.
It gets everybody. Ugh.
I'm not going to say I don't know how to cook. I got like a couple dishes I know how to make, but like, it's not my strong suit. I'm to the point where like I would love to hire a chef to just come cook me healthy things so I don't have to go eat out. But that's my worst thing is eating out.
Definitely. Everybody's got one. So what's your best money habit then?
My best money habit is tracking my money. And I guess that's from having to balance the checkbook. That's why I know I spend too much on eating out because I'm a stickler for like tracking where's it going? Where's this? How much is that? And making sure it's all there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Giving every dollar a job.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Something you do for fun that doesn't cost anything.
Okay. This is probably going to make me sound like an old lady, but I like to scrapbook. I like scrapbooking.
Scrapbooking?
Yes.
Oh, if you like scrapbooking, I could just mail you everything that I have and you can just send it back to me beautiful because I got a lot of stuff to scrapbook and I do not like scrapbooking.
But wait a minute. I guess that does cost money though.
Well, you got to buy the stuff.
We've got to buy the stuff. Okay, so that doesn't count.
But you really enjoy the time that you spend putting the scrapbooky stuff together.
Yeah. I like reading. Let's just say I like reading.
Okay. Yeah. You can go to the library and get books for free.
Yeah.
All right. Last but not least, can you share with us one thing that you would like to improve about your finances in the upcoming year?
Reducing taxes. Oh my Lord. Reducing taxes and structuring a trust in some way. I'm like, those wealthy people have something figured out, and I've got to figure it out in 2019 so that more of our money is staying within our family.
Yes. You want to keep it in your pocket, not in Uncle Sam's.
Yes.
There are way too many strategies. We said chess, not checkers. We got to take advantage of those things that are available to us. The legal things. I think one of the things in our community too is always figure out how to cheat on your taxes. Like, it's not about cheating.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
It's about using the things that are available to do what's right and let it benefit you. All right. We have made it to the finish line. You are a great sprinter. You did well at our final sprint. You're standing on the podium with a gold medal around your neck. And now it is your time to shine. So go ahead and shout yourself out. Tell us how we can support you, where we can find you, what projects you're working on that we can jump on board with, all of that.
You can find me at telaholcomb.com, where I'm teaching everyday people about the stock market in plain English. You can also find me on Facebook or Instagram at Tela Holcomb. And if you're interested in learning the stock market, definitely pop over to my website, sign up for my free course. I'm actually teaching my Trade Your 9 to 5 course live in person for the first time ever in April of 2019 here in Las Vegas. I'm super excited about that. You can learn more about that at tradeyour9to5.com/live.
Yes, I love it. Tela, thanks so much for being on the show today. We hope everyone found this episode worth listening to.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Tela's money memoir. She's a great example of the fact that we're all capable of making it happen in our own lives. Tela wasn't taught how to invest in the stock market. She started investing time first before she started investing. She invested time in mastering her craft, and she has become incredibly successful. Don't underestimate the value of investing your time in whatever it is that you want to be awesome at. Our word of the day today, trademarking. A trademark is essentially a symbol or a set of words that are intended to be used to identify and distinguish the brand name of one seller from that of others. So what you want to do is you want to legally register your name or your logo so that others can't impersonate your material. Tela shared with us some reasons why it's so important, and I gotta say, I also have been dragging my feet on getting my trademarks. Trademarking your ideas helps you protect your intellectual property. You may have great ideas that could really help change your financial future, but if you don't protect those ideas, you could lose them completely. Tela is able to rest easy because she knows if someone tries to use something she created, that her intellectual property will be protected. Her trademark attorney has her back. It's not only important to make money and create ideas, but also to protect what you've created. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We hope you found this episode worth listening to. If you have financial questions, suggestions for guests, or would like to share your own money memoir, please contact us through our website, worth-listening.com.